So.
You ready?
No.
Oh, well, that's good. All right. So, first episode.
No.
You getting excited? No?
Sorry.
Good.
I will be.
All right. So, people don't know us, obviously. So, why don't you introduce yourself and tell people a little bit more about yourself, your background, how we got here.
Oof. Okay. So my name's Emily. I have been in the marketing world for 12 years. So my name's Emily. I've been in the marketing world for the last 12 or so years in just kind of different industries, from convenience stores to commercial wall coverings to helping people build their personal brands. I love marketing and being able to track small changes and being able to kind of push the limits of what is the norm and what will kind of catch consumers' perspectives and interest in all of that, while not feeling like you're going completely left field and just doing something to go viral. I have a ton of experience mainly with B2B. That's kind of where my niche has always been, but with a lot of kind of experimenting, that's not the right word, a lot of new experiences in more B2C, which has been a lot of fun, being able to bring something directly to market and not business to business and then to market. So that's been a nice change.
Nice.
Yeah.
So before I talk about myself, which is the least favorite thing of mine to do, why are we sitting here?
Because you wanted to start talking.
I know, but why are we talking about ourselves and business on social media?
So almost a year ago, you and I were on a walk with the dogs, and I was probably complaining about working a 9 to 5, which was really, ended up being 60 hours a week, and being frustrated with systems that were put in place that I couldn't find a reason to. And so you had the idea that why don't we just go and do it ourselves? And here we are.
All right. So you are the marketing expert. Now the question is, what the hell am I doing here, right? Now I have no marketing experience in, the sort of like forward-facing client way. I have been teaching marketing, especially sports marketing, for a while at this point. I think the first time I taught it, it's almost 10 years ago. And there's always been a strong interest in marketing, right? So my background, I have a PhD in sport management, it's strategy, it's operations, it's human behavior. There's also a lot of experience in writing. So I think at the time, the idea was, kind of look where our strengths complement each other and see how we can, work together. You with your experience, me with the things that I bring to the table, and then also, the way that we kind of look at the things that we do in the business right now. The web design, I love the tinkering, I love teaching myself new things, the video editing, all that good stuff. That's been a nice, fruitful relationship, right? Now, there's a couple of questions here, and by a couple, I mean 100. So we got a good chunk of content. So this is going to go on for a while. So if you plan on sticking around, good, there's going to be a lot of content coming. So that was the initial spark, right?
Yeah.
That, got us going, thinking about this. So you covered the moment. It was, walking the dogs, which I don't know about you, but that's where I get all my best and worst ideas.
Oh, 100%.
So usually the scenario is something along the lines of I walk the dogs, I come back, and I have an idea that's ridiculous. That time it was you, but it worked out. It wasn't, quite as ridiculous maybe as we thought it was going to be. But when we started out, why are we serving the clients that we're serving? Like, what is the niche that we are tackling, and how do we get to this point?
Yeah, so I think that within marketing agencies, there's kind of this large gap between full service agencies, which are your agencies that you pay, a $20,000+ retainer a month, and they do your website and your social and product launches and all these sort of things. And you get what you pay for most of the time. And then there are these companies, these smaller companies that large agencies, boutique agencies won't even touch because they don't have the budget, but they need the help. So that's where we saw kind of this gap of we can offer all of these services. We can do SEO, we can do the Google ads, the basic branding, all of that sort of thing. And the things that you and I can't do ourselves, like shooting video, because of all of the years I've spent in the industry, like we have this kind of external agency that we can tap into that have a lot of the same values that you and I do. So we're able to offer smaller companies or, people that are building their personal brands, this kind of full service when they need it. Because not everybody needs to go in and shoot $30,000 video so they have content for 4 years, or need to spend, $1,500 a month on Google ads. A lot of times it's just really going back to the basics and building from there.
Right.
So the clients we serve, they understand the building blocks. That, we might say, no, don't spend Google ads because you're going to throw money into the wind. Let's take that money and let's invest in a new website. Let's invest in redoing all of your print collateral, and really kind of helping these companies that want to learn about marketing, teach them and bring them along the journey, or just kind of take it all off of their plates when they just want to worry about working on their business.
All right. Now, and I'm glad you bring this up, it is people that understand, or at least want to understand, what goes into doing marketing the right way. So it's not like we're just out there and saying, hey, we know you got no money. If you give us $100, we're going to do this for you. Usually it will be $10K. So there's still a lot of value, right? And the things that we can do and the things that we do, in fact, do for our clients. It's just, we're cutting off like a lot of the fluff. I think we're removing a lot of excess in the margins, where you go to a big agency, you're paying for essentially 20 things, 10 of which have nothing to do with your actual account. So you have clients, they bring in money, they pay a retainer, and only a small portion of that actually goes toward the work that is then being done on their actual accounts, which to me was very appealing when you first brought this up. Because from the outside looking in, there seemed to me like a little bit of a disconnect, right? Okay, so we're charging 5 figures, we're charging 6 figures. 20% of this is actually going toward your particular business, your particular service, and the value that you're getting is not really in relation to the money that one is paying. So that was one of the things that, really drew me to the idea, to have that closer alignment of value input and output. So that's been good. And, working with the clients that we have been working with so far, they see that value. They acknowledge and appreciate the fact that if they pay us X amount, that X amount is toward their bottom line. Right? So that's been really cool. So as we're, unraveling this a little bit, how do we divide our responsibilities? So I think, everybody who goes into business, with either a partner or a spouse, they have an idea of like who does what well, but what would you say is our usual sort of like go-to split of duties? So
I am more client facing. It's where I'm the most comfortable. So listening to, potential clients and, figuring out what their needs are now and how to set them up for the future. So I'm definitely more the client facing, as well as the kind of AE for the agency, the account executive for the agency, making sure that like the information that clients send is like digested and kind of pulled apart, because sometimes there's too much information and you have to whittle it down or figure out what's missing, and then put that organized, and then obviously making sure everything gets done. In my opinion, your role is more of kind of that back end, like you love doing like the website audits and the Facebook audits, and like you said earlier, you're a big tinkerer, so you love doing websites, and you are an amazing writer. So you do all of the writing and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, and for those watching that are thinking about getting into business, either with a spouse or a friend or maybe somebody else, I think it's important knowing going in at least roughly where that split can happen, right? If you start a business and you have two people that are just 100% always just, pedal to the metal, I want to talk to people. I want to be out there. I want to network. I want to be client facing. Well, then the question is, okay, are you going to hire a third person to do your content? Are you going to hire a fourth person to do your video editing? Are you going to hire a fifth person who's going to spend 6, 8, 10 hours a day when, there's a new website that's being built that is going to look at all the SEO stuff? So I think it's important to have a bit of a task and affinity match, at least roughly lined up before you're going in, right? Yeah. So it's important to also know yourself, I think, well enough to acknowledge that, right? So you love talking to people. Like, you are outgoing, personable. Not that I'm not reasonably personable occasionally when I choose to be, but it's not something that I naturally get like a kick out of. I get a kick out of adjusting meta tags on a website for 6 hours. And, making sure that, we got the right header tags, we got, meta descriptions, that we got the title tags right, that the content has the right keyword density, that there's no keyword stuffing, these like super tinkery, nitty gritty, sitting in the dark office at 3 a.m. with a coffee and headphones on type work, right? Yeah. So anybody out there, if you want to start your own business with somebody else, have an idea going in, roughly at least, who's going to do what. I think that's a great point. So looking at the questions, again, there's a lot of them. There's one question that maybe we won't even be able to answer this quite yet because it's only been a year. What's your most memorable moment so far of this journey?
I don't know. I think finally feeling confident enough to tell friends and family.
Yeah.
Because we did it for a while and it was just you and I knew.
Took you longer than it took me.
Yeah, it really did. Well, I think too, like going from, like I was a VP at a boutique agency and then like kind of making a left-hand turn and like changing course. Because from the outside looking in, I had a great job. So I think like just feeling like confident enough in the decision, or not even confident enough, but like secure enough in the decision and like knowing that this was right for us, I think just like took time. Yeah. You?
There's a couple that stand out. I think signing our first retainer client.
Yeah.
That wasn't a friend that needed help anyway and just so happened to then realize, we were running a marketing agency.
We could do it.
And essentially said something along the lines of, well, I'm going to spend the money anyway, I'll give it to you.
Yeah.
So signing that first real, quote unquote, that first real retainer client, that was great. The other thing, and this is going to tangentially come back, I'm going to make a point, which if you keep watching this, you're going to have these moments of me getting like long-winded, but it's going to make sense. Handing a product off to somebody and they just love it. And there's been a couple of times, and again, with our split duties, for me, it's especially handing off a website. And you can just see it in the client's eyes and they just love it, right? And for me, that's especially memorable because at least on the face of it, on paper, I get no business designing websites.
Right.
Which, here's the point I was trying to make. I think it's also crucial to understand the difference between a skill set match when wanting to go into business, whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
And whatever your arbitrary credentials might be. Right? So you have a marketing background, right? You have been in the industry for over a decade. You took university courses in marketing. So you are a marketer, right? There's nothing, if you were to look at my resume, my journey, that would tell somebody, oh yeah, I'm going to hire this person to design my website. But the question is, what are the skill sets? What are the skills that I have learned in other endeavors that have also served me well there to then be somebody who can design a website once I have taught myself the processes? So I think that's also crucial to keep in mind, right? So you might not be, a web designer, but maybe you've been tinkering in your basement with Photoshop for the last 5 years because that's just something you enjoy doing. Nobody knows that though if they were to just look at your resume. But you might be a better graphic designer than somebody who actually went to graphic design school if they sucked at it, right? So that was the point I'm trying to make. So memorable moments, good. To wrap this up, first episode, right? We don't want to overburden our capacities because we've also been filming Instagram content all day, so there's a lot happening.
Yes.
Especially if it's just two people.
Yeah.
To wrap things up a little bit, is there something that you had known before starting this?
Hadn't known?
What's the one thing looking back you were like, oh, I wish I had known this before we started this?
I think it would have saved you and I a lot of headbutting and big emotions.
Big emotions? I don't have big emotions. I have zero emotions.
If we had paid attention to the way we communicate with each other, because you and I, after 13 years, know how to communicate as husband and wife, as friends, as parents to a 6-year-old. Like, we've got that. But you and I communicate, and I think it might more so be the way I communicate more in a professional setting that's different. Because I would come to you like I would go to a copywriter, creative director, whoever in an agency, which isn't rude or mean, but it is like just to the point. You know what I mean? It's like, let's save time.
She's trying to say I'm sensitive.
No, that's not what I'm saying. But I think because I go there and I don't think you expected that in the beginning.
Right.
Because I'm always like, I'm in the place of like, okay, if I'm putting somebody on a call, I need to make it worth their time.
Right.
And I need to make it as short as possible. Because everybody hates those calls that like could have been an email. So I think understanding how we both communicate differently in professional settings. And I think it's the same for you, because I would have feedback and I'd maybe say it a little aggressively. You would then match my aggressive tone or vibe or however you took it. And then I would be put off.
Right.
And just kind of like want nothing to do with it and be confused why you had that reaction.
Right.
So I think I wish that we had taken the time in the beginning to figure that out and not, when we're going 100 miles an hour. That makes sense.
And context too is important. So obviously your professional experience is with people of similar age, similar backgrounds, similar vision, and they're sort of everybody's in the same sort of sphere, right? Mm-hmm. So when you talk to a copywriter that's part of the agency, if you talk to your boss in your agency, if you talk to a client in your agency, there's this sort of like, okay, we're all grown adults. We met in this particular setting. We all play by the same rules. Hopefully, some people are rude and don't know how to act, but we all play by the same rules. So there's this sort of like professional standard decorum, right? For context, I'm a college professor. I have been a college professor for over a decade, right? If we count the classes I started teaching myself while I was getting my PhD. So my professional tone, especially in the beginning for a long, long time, my professional day-to-day tone is me talking to a 19-year-old.
Yes.
And it's me packaging feedback in a way that's not going to ruffle any feathers or saying something in a way that, keeps somebody's sense of self intact.
Yeah.
Right? So my professional voice in the beginning at least, was not your professional voice.
Right.
Because your professional voice, in many respects, in many regards, is one of equals. It's one of equals on the same page, in the same arena almost, right?
Yeah.
Where my professional voice is a bit more, I don't want to call it paternalistic, like it's not a professor talking down to a student, but it's the power imbalance is definitely a little different. So for me, professional context looked a little different, and I think it affected, especially early on, the way that we communicated a little bit, right? So that's interesting. Yeah. Mine's definitely going in, unless do you have something to add though? No. The sound of crickets between signing clients and the massive just sense of everything being a one-way street with absolutely no result.
Yeah.
Which again, a lot of it is driven by my personal work experience, right? Like if I teach a good class, I know in that moment there's 30 kids. These days I teach online with grown-ups, so it's a little different. But when I was in the classroom still, there's 30 kids staring at me. And I know, like in a heartbeat, if what I'm doing isn't working, if what I'm doing isn't connecting.
Right.
So you can pivot right then and there. If you're a good professor, which I am, admittedly, you can pivot almost on the spot, right?
Yeah.
Like almost mid-sentence, like, okay, this isn't connecting, this isn't delivering. I know there's something on the next slide. The vibe in the room right now, the mood of the group isn't quite where I want it to be for what I have planned. We're going to skip this, we're doing something else.
Right.
For us, and for our work, there's a lot of doing with absolutely no response.
Right.
So that feedback loop being completely absent in the beginning for me, that was difficult. Because you need, on the one hand, you need to produce stuff. Let's use Instagram, for example, right? You need to produce content to get data to understand what works and what doesn't.
Right.
But you need to give that data time to actually accumulate. So you're posting 50 times, 100 times, 150 times, 200 times, and it's only then where you're getting reliable feedback. And it was the same with getting clients. And it was almost a drawback that we started day one. And we started the agency effectively with clients. And then there was this lull of months where it was just like acquisition, trying with nothing, right? And then all of a sudden you have this like avalanche of connecting, proposing things, submitting bids, signing new people. Now we're growing, we're recording a podcast, doing all this stuff, but that's sort of going 100 miles an hour, but not really knowing when the stop signs are going to come or when the traffic light's going to, show up. That was difficult for me in the beginning. And now it's just like kind of part of the game.
Yeah.
But I also think I've gotten more comfortable with it as we have clients.
Right.
So you have a little bit more of a safer base to actually then do the things that are necessary.
And I think with the client, like the client feedback loop it's so different from client to client. Which I think, in the beginning, we had clients that were a little more accessible, a little more reachable. So we'd send an email and in an hour or two, we'd get feedback, which is unusual. I mean, that's just not normal. It's wonderful, but not always the norm. So I think like as we got other clients, it took longer to respond. And like, for me, it was just kind of like, okay, I'll give them 2 days and then follow up, which I think drove you a little crazy.
A little bit.
Like learning people's communication, times. Because then like this person responds in 48 hours. It's been 70, it's been 36 hours. I'm gonna send them a quick text. And just be like, hey, did you see this? I can resend it, so it's at the top if you want, or something like that. But I think drove you I think you found that frustrating.
Yeah, and again, part of that is context dependent, right? So as much as any two individuals are not alike, but I think if you spend half a decade in the classroom with your target audience being day in, day out, 18 to 21, there are just certain patterns that repeat.
Right.
So you just get into the habit of just expecting certain things, seeing certain things on a regular basis. Whereas in your case, not only have you been in marketing for over a decade, you've been with different agencies, you've worked with different clients in different industries, each of which offer, I think, these like different sort of like training opportunities, right? Where you get adjusted to this, you take this into your toolkit, you add this kind of like feather in your cap, right? And then you just kind of keep building that momentum and that skill set to put it all together and then be in that position where you can quickly pivot and deal with all these different things.
Yeah.
Whereas in my case, it was perfecting one audience. And then all of a sudden that audience was something else.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a challenge. But at the same time, it's cool. Like I like, you know, the challenge of things like this and growing with all the difficulties and, you know, sort of nuances that come with it. First episode. Ta-da! Thanks, y'all. See you next time.